Alright, so in this video we're actually going to solve a problem, like do a full programming exercise using what we've learned about arrays. So up at the top of this file I've actually copied in a Java question, or programming question. And it says design and implement an application that reads a number of integers that are in the range 0 to 50 inclusive, meaning that 50 is included in that range, and counts how many times each one is entered. After all input has been processed, print all of the values with the number of times each one was entered. Okay, so let's just start with the basic skeleton of what we need to do, or like the bare bones basics, and then we'll build it up until we have the final solution. So we know that we're going to need a scanner. Right, so we're taking in input from the user. So let's go ahead and make a scanner. Okay, there we go, bingo, we've got the scanner. And we want to take in integers. So let's do int I equals scan dot next int. Cool. So there we go. That reads in one integer. And we want to do that until something happens. Do that for now. Okay, so I did a while true. So just keep looping and then we'll break inside of here, because we know that we want to do this at least once. So this is the way to do that, or you could use like something called a do while. But I don't think the do while is on the AP exam, and in fact you don't see it very often out in the wild either. So we're not going to worry about it here. But we'll just use the this while true. And let's say if I, because we know the range is from 0 to 50. So let's just say if you enter a number that's not within that range, then we're going to break. So if I is less than 0, or, remember or is these double bars, or I is greater than 50. So notice 50 is included in what is an acceptable answer, because 50 is not greater than 50. If we'd done that, then we would only go up to 49. But we're including 50. So if I is between 0 and 50, break. Okay. So let's compile, run. 0, 5, 12, 58, and it broke. Nice. So we're only accepting numbers between 0 and 50, and as soon as we see one that isn't between 0 and 50, then it breaks. And that's not exactly what the problem says. The problem's actually kind of vague about how you get out of this loop, but I think this is going to work for our purposes. And let's see, what should we do next? So we got it working on a loop, but it's not printing out how many of each number that there are. So what is a way that we might solve this? How have we solved this in the past? Well, we've used like counters before, so we could try that. 0 counter. Right, so this one's going to count how many zeros there are. So if we didn't break, then well, I guess we'll do an else or else if I is 0, then do 0 counter. So we'll add 1 to it. Okay. So now we need a counter for the ones place. Alright, we'll just copy this. Okay, and then at the end, we'll just need to copy this. Okay, let's do the proof of concept and see if that works. 3 zeros, 2 ones. Cool, so it works. So all we need to do now is do it 48 more times. We got to make a counter for every single number. That's not a problem, is it? Let's see, we could start really copying and pasting. And this thing will probably be a couple hundred lines long. And then if we wanted to do the numbers between 0 and 100, we have to do it all over again and just keep copying and pasting. So, sure, we could solve it that way. And in fact, that's how we would have had to have solved it before we learned about arrays. But, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to sit here for 2 hours copying and pasting if statements. So let's look for the pattern in these things, and then we'll replace them with an array. So first, let's make an array. And we do know what the array is going to start with. Well, okay. Let me take a step back. So we know that we want to keep track of the number of times the numbers 0 through 50 inclusive are entered. So we know that we're going to want something that can hold those 51 values. And we know that something's going to be an array because we haven't learned about anything else yet. And we also know, I believe we saw this in the last video, that if you make an array and you don't specify what goes in each of the boxes, and it's an array of integers, then every box starts with a 0 in it, which makes sense because there would be 0 of each of the numbers at the start. So that's what we can do. Actually, let me pull up Paint again, and I'll show you. So we're going to have our array. Let's just say that we were just keeping track of the numbers 0 through 4. Oops, we gotta do that. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the index positions. And these are the numbers that are in those positions. Right? So this is what that array would look like at the start. Then what we want to have happen is when I type 2 and I hit enter, then this number becomes a 1. Then if I hit 4, this number becomes a 1. If I hit 2 again, it becomes a 2. Then I hit 0. This is a 1. I hit 1. 1. I hit 2 again. 3. So you see each bucket is keeping track of however many times the number, in this case the index, has been pressed or has been entered. And we don't have to do it that way. We could make this box represent the zeros and this one represent the ones and have everything be off by 1. The computer would be just as happy to do that because it doesn't care what's in these boxes. What's in the boxes is up here. It's in our minds. We've decided what they mean. But it's easier if we had this one-to-one correspondence. 0 is this bucket, 1 is this bucket, 2 is this bucket, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to do over here in code. So first, we need to make our array. So just like that. And we're going to call it, I'm going to call it counts. Because that's what it is, right? It's the counts of the numbers. and it's going to equal a new array, because we could do this, 51 times. But I don't want to do that. That's kind of ugly. It's also kind of hard to read. I don't want to sit there and count all those zeros. So we're better off doing this. New int, and then however many we want, 51. So that's nice and short, and then we don't need any of this anymore. So this one line just replaced what would have been 51 lines of code. Not too shabby. Now we come down here, and we had all these if statements, and we're like, okay, if it's a 0, do this. If it's a 1, do that. If it's a 2, do this. And we were going to have to go all the way to 51. Well, we don't need any of that anymore. You don't even need the if. You could replace it with an else if you wanted, but you don't even have to do that because the only way you're going to get out here is if this was false. So we can just get rid of all this. Get rid of that indent. And now we just need to increment the counter. And let's say the number was 2. 2 came through here. We come here. So we want the number 2 to go up 1. So we want this one to go up to 4 in this case. So how do we get this bucket? So that bucket has a name, or an address, or whatever you want to call it. That bucket is counts at 2. And 2, we just said, was the number that we entered. So 2 is I. So whatever I is, whatever number we have, as long as it's within range of the array, right? Then you're going to go here, go to its position, and add 1 to it. So if the number comes through at 0, go to index position 0, there's the bucket, it's 1, add 1 to 1, save over it, 2. If it comes through and it's 4, alright, we go to the 4th place, we got a 1, add 1 to 1, it's 2. So hopefully that makes sense. So there's another probably 150, 125 lines of code just cleaned up right there. Now the print statement. So this also would have been 51 lines of code. And what we can do is use a for loop, because that sounds like iteration, right? And in this case, we want to print both the number and the count of that number. So while we could use the enhanced for loop, which would give us this, I think we also want this number. So we're better off just using a normal for loop and going through the indices. So we'll call it, we already used I, but I think the scopes are different. This is okay. While I is less than, let's see, what do we call it? Counts dot length I plus plus. So go through all of the indices of that array for each one of them. I'm going to replace this with the printf because we're going to format it so it looks nice. Let's just get rid of all this. So what we want is to print whatever number it is. So save 2 spaces because the biggest number, 50, has 2 digits, and we want these to be organized. So we want the space for the 0 through the 9 to also have 2 digits. A space, a little hyphen, a space, however many digits we want for the tally. Now I'm going to guess that we're not going to use this for more than 99. So 2 digits for that as well should be fine. then we got to put in the arguments. So this is a placeholder. What are we going to put there? We want to put in I, which is the number. Then we want to put in, for this placeholder, the value, the number of times it was entered, which is just counts at bucket I. Save it. Oops, I forgot to compile it. Run it. Okay. So let's just enter the number 0 5 times. Let's enter the number 1 twice. And the number 3 4 times. And the number 58. Oof. So let's see, we got 5 zeros, 2 1s, 4 3s. So it worked. But this is really ugly printout. What went wrong here? What happened? Alright, take a look at this print statement and see if you can figure it out from the... You should be able to figure it out from the strings unit that we did. So look at that for just a second. It's missing something. Okay. So, unlike print line, printf is more like just print. So it doesn't automatically go to a new line each time. So we need to include the new line. So that's the special escape character for a new line. Compile it. Run it. 0 0 0 2 2 5 6 45 36 35 31. Oops. 31. Cool. So it kept track of how many times each one of these was entered. And it really didn't take all that many lines of code. This is really short, really elegant. Let's see, it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, I guess, instead of taking an entire novel's worth. So hopefully this motivates and shows why using arrays is so much better than just having count 1, count 2, count 3, count 4, count 5. And in fact, if you find yourself naming variables that way, it's very possible that there's a data structure hidden there and that you should be using some data structure instead. So hopefully this made sense. Hopefully you're able to follow along and get to this point and you got everything working without any syntax errors. And if not, if something for whatever reason went wrong, let me know. Or if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer anything you got. And I'll see you in the next video.